The Mickey Mouse in the public domain era has begun. Imagine by the time we're grandparents how many things are going to be in public domain. It's going to be horrible. The Mousetrap is one of those movies that's better watched never. And it stars nobody you've ever heard of, but they do have something of a budget. Like $800K, it's not big time budget, but for a horror movie, you should be able to pull off something decent with that. However, apparently that budget was only for hiring actors who are real enough actors that they don't have to take off their shirts to get in the movie, and an arcade to actually film in. That's where all the budget went, because the kill scenes are god-awful. They're not even semi-realistic. They are really, Predictably, they want to take a few pot shots at Disney to the extent that they open with a 90-second Star Wars-style crawl, which just goes on and on and on. It's just really long. And it's just about how Lucasfilm wanted nothing to do with this, Disney wanted nothing to do with this, they told us repeatedly. And that's the only time you can really tell that this is a horror comedy, because most of it is really not funny. And it doesn't even seem like they're making jokes. But are they? Hard to tell, because it's so bad. But not so bad it's funny, just bad. The framing story is one of the worst things that happens in this. It's one of the most egregiously bad things I've seen happen in a film anytime lately, actually. It's basically about one of the girls who was at the whole massacre that happened. She survived, and she's talking to the police from inside a jail cell, even though they have no reason to put her in a jail cell. And it skips. The worst part isn't that happens. And that's the framing story. The worst part is that it skips between what actually is happening and her telling them what's happening every 2 to 3 minutes. It is horrifying. It's the worst use of a framing device I've seen in actually ever, I think. So Alex's friends turn up at her job at an arcade to surprise her for her birthday. Why at an arcade instead of like on a boat, a steamboat? No. Mostly I think because they just decided, fuck it, let's do a shitty version of Willy's Wonderland. Which is already a shitty version of FNAF. Which is just shitty. So this group of one-dimensional characters, most of whom are in love with the main girl, like men, women, everyone is just in love with her, and there's no real reason why. She doesn't have a lot of personality. But they are trying to contend with this serial killer dressed as Mickey Mouse who can teleport. Magic, like Disney magic. He has magic. That's the reference they make. That's how that's meant to make sense as a thing. And I don't really get where the killer came from, because her boss was watching Steamboat Willie, because it's public domain so they can now. And then the mask, like there's a Mickey Mouse mask he has, which doesn't look like Mickey Mouse. And it's talking to him, and I can't tell if it's convinced him to kill them all and given him superpowers, or whether the mask or somebody else was there and killed him and took the mask. Nothing is explained and nothing makes sense. This was really bad. So the film takes just so long to get going. It's only 80 minutes long, but it takes the killer like a full hour before he really kicks into gear. Like, they're just kind of separated out. He kills a couple of them randomly without it really showing it, because they can't do kill scenes properly, and doesn't really get into it for so long. And then it just keeps skipping back to the framing story girl, who is just telling them, like, kind of a lot of the time spoiling things effectively before it gets going. It's awful. We also get fourth wall breaks. Way too many fourth wall breaks, because they're trying to be like, look, I'm like Scream. They're not like Scream. They're not. It's bad. And that's how they try and justify some of the stupid things the characters do, some of the bad decisions they make. There was also a whole subplot about one of the guys trying to get one of the other guys beaten up because they're both in love with the same girl, even though this film broke me, man. It was only 80 minutes. I had to pause once every 10 minutes just to have a little bit of a breather, you know? And then at the end, they just come up with a big plan to face off against the killer with 10 minutes left, and oh, that last 10 minutes. The ending was, if the rest of it had the same quality as the ending, this would get a negative mark. The rest of it was almost not good, but, you know, manageable. The last 10 minutes was some of the all-time worst filmmaking choices and plotline decisions I've ever seen in my life. I won't fully spoil it, but dear Lord, you will think like, oh, geez, this is pretty low down, this is pretty bad. And then that ending comes and you're just like, oh. And I know it's difficult sometimes for horror movies to stick the landing, but slashers have an easier time of it than most normally. So what were you doing? Dear Lord, what were you doing? I'm giving, this is why the public domain can't have nice things. 1 star. Every Friday we have a little Freaky Friday here on the channel where I go and watch something that I'm predicting is just going to be terrible, and normally they are terrible. This was really terrible. But if you get a channel membership, you can vote on the polls for what'll be next week's one. Yep.